We are live. This seems to be functioning like it's supposed to. Gosh, I got my coffee here. I got my sweet little let that shit go mug. Love it. Um, yeah, gosh, I got kind of a quick hitter today. I feel like I've been talking a ton lately on everything from classes and what's up, brother? Morning. Yeah, I've been talking a bunch, and I'm really not quite ready to announce this like huge change, but I am, because I don't quite understand exactly what it is yet. But what I do understand, I do want to talk about today, and so I wrote about how consistency isn't the goal. That was the title of the article yesterday, and I've been publishing consistently for 61 articles since last May. I haven't missed a single week of my newsletter. That includes holidays, Christmas, everything. And it's not like I needed to prove to myself that I could be consistent with something, because I already know that I can be. But it was interesting to apply that discipline to something new like this. And by doing so, I really started to learn much more about like what I want this to even be. And I'm still learning, and hopefully I always will be. But recently I've kind of just like taken a hard look at it, and I've been like, okay, consistency is great, but it's not the end goal, right? Like, consistency is a variable, or hopefully a catalyst that gets you towards the end goal. And so if I'm just being consistent for the sake of consistency, that's stupid, right? Like, if I'm just going to the gym every day and just tugging on ropes and just crossing that off my list and saying, "Oh, yep, went to the gym," but I'm not actually like getting anywhere, then what's the point, right? And so, yeah, I do think a lot of people struggle with consistency, and so we see it as an admirable trait, like the endurance to stay consistent with things, and it is important. I'm not trying to undercut it, but it's not the goal, right? So what I have realized is with this Substack, and really just my relationship with the broader social media in general, is I want to do something different with it, right? Like, first of all, I feel like Instagram just steals from me all the time. And I don't mean like content or something like that. I mean, steals my attention. It steals my emotion. And I really I've always kind of struggled with my relationship with Instagram, and just to consider it. And I've talked before about the push pull relationship that we should try to have, and that we're pulling information from social media because it really is a powerful platform. But too often we allow it to push us information. And I can't tell you how many times I open up the app to post something or do a story or take a picture or whatever, and the first post that comes up is it's outrage bait, and it's like, it's angering, and it's like stuff about politics and all this crap that matters. I'm not trying to say it doesn't matter, but I cannot possibly stay regulated in a situation where that is just constantly force fed to me every time I touch my phone. Talk about like an easy way to just go off the deep end. Every single time you open up your phone, be looking at that. And so with Substack, I don't feel that way. I really, really like my relationship with Substack. I don't feel addicted to it ever. I feel like it's there when I want it to be, but I also feel like it's a platform that I want to create on, which is really the most important thing. And this result of, or I guess this decision that I need to kind of start changing things. It's the result of just trial and error, and trying these things out, making sure I can stay consistent, but then also just kind of less figuring out what my audience wants to hear, because I'm not sure I've found my niche audience, right? But more so what I want to share and how I want to share it. And what I realized is with this Substack stuff, I've been sharing a lot about the philosophy, and that probably has a lot to do with me kind of figuring out how to put words to the way that I live. But I've been sharing so much of the philosophy and not really any of the application. And I think the application is what makes this really valuable. And people that have worked with me, they get the application piece of it, and I think they would probably agree. But it needs to be clearer online what that application is. And so like I really like the idea of like, hey, I've been providing the map, but I haven't been providing the territory. And so it's the same thing with like consistency with is not the end state. The map is not the end state. The territory is like, I want to go exploring. I want to get out there and see what we can do with this. And so that's really forefront on my mind is how do I provide real value through my Substack now and through this newsletter. And who am I providing that value to? What problem am I solving for them? And how do I solve it differently than anyone else? And so, I really toyed around with changing the name away from gentle discipline, but I'm like, you know what? Like, because it's not quite clear. People, gentle discipline, what's that? But that is the philosophy, and that's the philosophy for everything that I do. And so I am going to maintain that. But what I am going to change is the content of what exactly it is that I'm talking about, because I want to provide not just the map but the territory as well. And so, yeah, I read about how this like really makes me nervous, right? Like it makes me nervous to change. I'm super afraid that I'm going to lose the readership that I already have. I'm afraid that I won't know enough to build this new thing. I don't understand how the systems work, and I'm afraid that I'll fail. And I think all of that is very natural, and it's interesting, right? Like I not only am I afraid to fail, but I think on a deeper level, I'm afraid that other people will see me fail. And that's really interesting to me. And that's really something that I get to reflect on and kind of sit with and decide if I want to hang on to that conditioning, because I don't. Let's be straight up. And so like the first step is like recognizing that conditioning is there. And so I do get nervous about people seeing me make mistakes or seeing me mess up, and what they're thinking about that. But I'm getting better as I get a little bit older, and I keep practicing this gentle discipline with myself, about not worrying about that so much, because mistakes are part of the plan. And this really is kind of like the blessing and the curse of being an entrepreneur, is the fact that you will make mistakes, but you get to make mistakes and you get to make new mistakes. And by making new mistakes, that is just evidence that you are getting smarter and you are learning new things. If you're making the same mistakes over and over and over again, then that's something different, right? Like that's probably stupidity, not intelligence. So the other night in a group call, we got talking about the hermetic philosophy and this hermetic spectrum, that polarity exists on. And so, most things have a direct opposite. If you think about like, I've talked about it before, from cold to hot, from dark to light, and fear is no different, right? So on the same spectrum exists fear and exists excitement. And this is a really interesting thing, right? Because we often attach ourselves to the emotion of fear, but really all it is energy on this spectrum that can move left or right. We can move it closer to fear or we can move it to excitement. It's activation energy, right? And it's up to us what we want to do with that energy. And if we can just realize that it's not fear that I'm feeling, it's energy. And then I can take this energy and I can transmute it to the opposite pole, which is excitement. I think I read something the other day that was good. It was like, when I'm scared and my heart starts fluttering, I think of that as like internal applause, like cheering me on and getting me ready to go. And I thought that was kind of cool. And so the kind of the last points I want to leave with is just developing the simple discipline of consistency is relatively easy. It just takes practice. But what I think is more important and more difficult to achieve is the complex discipline of truth, and specifically being honest with ourselves. I think a lot of us think of ourselves as honest people, but if we really sit down and we really get real with ourselves about what we're feeling, where it's coming from, and who we are, some of those questions get a little bit trickier to answer. And so I do think that the discipline of truth is a bit more complex than the discipline of consistency. And so, yeah, at the end of the day, we're starting to ask just, what is this that I'm doing? You know, regardless of what it is that we're doing, whether we're training hard, we're in a new job, we're starting a business, anything like that. What is this thing that I'm doing? Who am I? And where do I want to go? Where do I want to go with this thing? And once I understand that and I recognize that, the next thing is, okay, damn the fear. What do I have to do to get there? Who do I have to be? Who do I want to be? And all of this is so it's so fascinating to me. I really enjoy kind of talking about it and practicing it, because that's what it does require, is practice. So thanks so much for listening, guys. Thanks for being here. I am so excited to continue sharing into the future. I'm going to keep doing these Wednesday morning lives for as long as I can, I think, because I do see their value. Yeah, so cheers. I hope you guys are doing great.